Good afternoon. Hey, Dave. How you doing?
Hey, all right. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's Thursday, and we're back as promised. By popular demand, is what I understand. How's your week? So far, so good. I
Fine?
hope. Yeah.
Huh?
Excellent, 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 excellent. All right. So, got a good one planned today. Um, I don't really have anything to talk about other than to talk about this fine gentleman that we're about to bring in. And the last time we saw him, we shared a delightful plate of Thai food at a restaurant in the heart of Wilkesboro, North Carolina, when we attended Melfest last year. And he is always a delight to have in our company. Hank Smith is a regular contributor to DearingBanjos.com, and today he's going to join us to talk about the different aspects of composing non-bluegrass music on a five-string banjo. For those of you who don't know Hank, he is, of course, the Hank in Hank, Patty and the Current, who just finished recording their fifth album. And in celebration of today's episode, we actually created a very special Spotify playlist of Hank's favorite current tunes. So we're going to throw that link into the chat momentarily. But I think in the meantime, there's no time to waste. Let's bring him in, Mr. Hank Smith.
Hey
Hey,
everybody,
buddy.
how's it going? Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too. Out in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's right, capital
Absolutely.
city.
That's right. How have you been?
Been good. Been really busy. As mentioned, that the new album has taken up a lot of time, and we're really excited to get it finished and get it out to the world. So soon, soon, soon.
All right. Let's take a minute to plug real fast. Because you were telling us about the recording process. You did how many tracks in how many days?
We did 15 songs in 3 days, 5 songs per day. It was
From start to
intense.
finish,
Started
all
all done.
instrumentation, all
Everything's
vocals.
yep, it's all done. It
That's
was pretty
awesome.
intense. We were limited to 8-hour days, so it's not like we were doing it for 14 hours or anything like that. We had 10 to 6 every day. We had to get it done in that amount of time. And I'm happy to say we pulled it off. And nobody killed anybody else, so it was great.
Hey, that's also an awesome time. And the
Yeah.
release date, I know you haven't got the name and everything confirmed yet, but the
Nope.
release date is
June 3rd. For
June
those of
3rd.
you in the Triangle area, we will be having our album celebration show at the Cat's Cradle in Carborough on June
All right.
3rd, Friday, June 3rd.
We'll be sure to be pushing that out closer to the time. That sounds awesome. Congratulations on the recording. And also happy St. Patrick's Day.
Indeed.
It's a wonderful day.
Happy St. Patrick's
Uh,
Day.
we kept the green background, especially for the occasion, as you can
Nice.
see. All right. There's only one way to start a Deering Live episode, and that is to invite our guest to play a little tune.
Sure.
And if we are correct in saying that this tune, A, is from the new album, but B, it's going to be one of the foundations for the discussion today as well, right?
That's right. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the song and the way we go from here.
So the song is called Take Time. It is a generally a positive song lyrically. It has a message of hope. Whenever it is released in the world and you hear it, you'll see that reflected in the lyrics. What makes this tune in particular unique is that it is in 5/4 time, which we'll get into in the discussion a bit. And it kind of falls outside of what would be a normal harmonic structure, I guess, at least for the verse. In the chorus, it goes back to normal diatonic harmony, but in the verse, at least, it explores a little bit of a different thing. So I'm just gonna play through the verse and chorus form one time, just to give the people a sense of what's going on. And also bear in mind, it's not an instrumental song; it has lyrics, so there is a vocal line that would be on top of it. So if it sounds repetitive, it's meant to be because it's just a verse form. But in any case,
All right.
that's the story with that one.
Well, take
All
it
right,
away, Mr. Hank
here we
Smith.
go. a basic idea. Little verse, chorus form.
All right, all right. Um, Before we dive into kind of analysis of that tune and grabbing some um, yeah, talking about some concepts for that viewers can take to try themselves.
Sure.
When were we just going to be a little more general and just like where do you start drawing inspiration for some of your compositional ideas? Is it just kind of come to you? Do you pick up your banjo? Do you have like is there another artistic medium or that, anything?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's different tune to tune. Sometimes, songs just pop out. Like you might have an idea for a particular chord progression or something like that, and it's like, well, I wonder if I do this, and they all just start to fall into place. With this tune, we in the composing songs for the album as we went along with it, we were kind of thinking like, all right, what direction is this record headed in on the whole? And is there an idea that we need to flesh out that will kind of help fit the continuity of the rest of the record? So in other words, you don't have like 15 songs of random things that aren't related in any way, shape, or form. But it's also not like leaning in the concept album direction either. So like with this particular song, I knew I wanted to have something in 5/4, and I've always liked 5/4 ever since I heard Bela Fleck play his tune Blue Bop. That was my introduction to 5/4 time. And so for those of you out there in TV land, you can count 5/4 a number of ways. You can go 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 if you want to, but I subdivide 5/4 1 2 3 1 2 because that's how Bela did it on that particular track. So in my mind, 5/4 is 1 2 3 1 2 by default, which is to say like. So it can have like a little hitch in it, but it swings a bit too, so it's not it's not jarring to the listener or anything like that to hear a tune played in 5/4 like that. So what really inspired, I guess, what inspired this particular song on the front end more immediately would have been the Punch Brothers reimagining of Church Street Blues, which comes in 5. I believe that's in the tune that's in 5/4. And so I was like, that's great because it's accessible. You can have a nice vocal melody over top of this 5/4 rhythm, and it sounds normal. With this particular song, Patty and I wanted to try an experiment specifically with her, and when you listen to the fully fleshed out track, you'll hear this. And that is, at one point, she sings a note, but plays a line, and then at another point, sings a line but holds a note on the fiddle at the same time. And so all the while this chord bed, this bed of is happening underneath it, and it floats, like she's allowed to sort of float above it. And again, it's more accessible, it's got a hook. And even though the chord progression in the verse is a little bit outside the box, it flips back to a normal sort of chord progression in the chorus. So again, the idea being all things even, we wanted to make sure that it's, even though it's in 5/4 and it has a quirky chord progression, it still has plenty of hook and is listenable. It's not clever for the sake of it.
And because you're in a band situation, are you and the band members generally writing together, or are you taking parts?
In this
coming
case,
in with tunes, or
yeah, no. In this case, this was the most collaborative record we've done, so we all had a hand in it to some degree. In this case, a lot of times what happens is I'll write a set of music. I'll write like a verse, chorus, bridge, or some kind of basic structure to a song in no particular order, and send that on to the other band members and have them come up with lyrics, and then when we get together, we arrange it. In this case, I had the verse, pre-chorus, chorus fully fleshed out and ready to go to give to them, so that Patty got a hold of it, and Patty and Billy are the fiddle and guitar player respectively in the band. They were able to kind of take that and run with it lyrically. and then as a group we come together and arrange it. And so lucky enough to be in a band with extremely talented people, and they are also all trained musicians and write everything down. So all of the stuff is charted out, and if there's any kind of change made to it, they can make the changes on the paper or iPad, whatever, in real time, and have it so that when we go into the studio and record it, it's there. There's no like, well, what do we do here? You know what I mean? There's no fleshing it out on the clock kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So if for viewers that are in a band and they've been playing traditional tunes and they've like, we want to play some original tunes, how would you kind of suggest, that happening in a band situation? Because it's hard, kind of like sometimes you don't want, if you're the only one with that sort of feeling and be like, hey, I got all these songs
right.
that I've made, and or you're just like, or you're kind of confused about how to write for the other instruments too.
Right.
What would you see for somebody that's kind of starting out? They're in a band, but they haven't dove into original tunes. What would you suggest kind of a starting point for that?
I would say, honestly, keep it simple. Everybody always says write what you know, but if you're kind of coming into it blank slate and you're not really sure what you know, just start with what you can manage. Like don't try not to be overwhelmed, I guess, by the rich complexity of all of Western music or anything like that. Like pretty much just try to start with something very simple, and it doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing. It can be very easy, 3-chord wonder. You can get a lot done with that. As it pertains to this particular discussion, writing something that isn't bluegrass on a banjo. Banjos, first of all, I would like to point out that banjos can do anything. Like, they can play any kind of music regardless. They get pigeonholed into bluegrass and that kind of stuff a lot. But by no means are they limited. And there are myriad examples of extremely talented artists that do that every day. Bela Fleck, of course, Jens Kruger, Nempa Kelny, all these guys. Like, they all write outside the box for the most part, and they really just write from the heart, and that's the main thing. Jens told me a while ago, the technique is there to serve the emotion, not the other way around. So you want to come from a place that's emotional. It doesn't matter what kind of music you're writing. It makes absolutely no difference. It could be heavy metal, it could be classical, it could be whatever. As long as it's coming from a place of emotion and it's something that you feel and you feel that is important for other people to feel, write whatever you want. Start small, though. Start simple. If you've never done it before, banjos are in open G. Start in G. Pick an easy key. You know what I mean? Just kind of pick the low-hanging fruit at first. Kind of come up with a basic idea and go from there. And so how do you come up with a basic idea? There's a couple of different ways to do it. You could have an idea for a lyric in your head or just a simple melody or something like that, in which case you'll want to kind of play with whatever that idea is. Or if you're not with your banjo and you have your cell phone, you can always just kind of sing it into the voice memos or something like that. Leave yourself a message. But if you want to think about it in terms of like nuts and bolts, like how to put together a thing, again, start with a simple idea. I'll use an existing example of a tune as a thing. Actually, I'll use a couple of examples. One, the idea is that you have a musical dialogue. So you can think of like call and response. So you can do this with one string. You can do it all on one string at first. And I'll use this as an example. So if this is the call, then that's a statement. And so then maybe there's a question that comes after that. And then, okay, now the resolve. So we all know that one. Now, that's just one note on one string at a time. The next thing you might want to do is add another note to it to add a little bit of harmony. So, and then, sounds good. Let's add a third note. Great, now you want to change it. Now you can change it any number of ways. You can change the harmony. you can change the technique. It could go, and then you're off to the races at that point. I know I'm picking a normal tune, but also not a bluegrass tune, to demonstrate this. But that's basically the idea. Like, you just start with something really simple and then stack something on top of it and then keep going from there. And if you get to the point where it's like, well, we've completely lost the original idea, or this is starting to sound like gobbledygook, then reduce it back down to whatever it was before and start over. As long as the first idea is there, then you can kind of build from there. Like, it's good to have that solid foundation. And you know, at that point, you can have a very simple thing that can become very ornamented or very complex or however arranged it might be. But it doesn't have to start that way. It can be pretty easy.
And in your example, you kept the melody voice on the highest pitched string. Do you suggest doing that when starting out?
You can, yeah. It's easier for your ear to hear that with the voice leading in the high strings. It's just more, and also it's kind of banjoistic, right? Like, that's kind of how banjos operate in the first place. Like, you're used to hearing stuff like that, and it's all like leading you right down that path on the high string. But highly encourage you to experiment, flip it around, put the voice leading in the bass, and change the bass sounds and see what that does to it. You know, if you have access to a keyboard instrument, you can play a chord on the banjo, or play a note rather on the guitar, and then play different chords on the banjo, but keep the same bass note and see how it slides around. See how it changes the character of the chord that you're playing on the top, and then flip it around by the same token. So there's lots of ways to kind of go about it. If you would rather hear it more in the bass, then try that. You know, the sky's the limit when it comes to that stuff, and you don't have to be Bela or Jens to come up with something that just sounds nice. Like I said, sometimes the songs just pop right out, and you follow that. Like, you may come up with a tune like that, and then be like, wait a minute, that's already a song, or I'm definitely stealing this from something. And it's like, unless you're like actively, literally just playing someone else's tune, it can be inspired by something else. Like, you may think it sounds like that, but then if you play it against whatever it is you think it sounds like, or ask people, and it's like, oh wait, no, that doesn't sound like that at all. Or I've heard that before. Like, I've come up with ideas for tunes and bounced them off of people. I'm like, tell me what this song is, and they're like, it doesn't sound like that. And I'm like, you don't think it sounds like X? And they're like, no, I never would have thought of that. And it's like, okay, so maybe we're all right, you know. But don't limit yourself is the main thing, I guess.
And is there a different way to approach writing a instrumental tune versus a song with words?
I think with an instrumental tune, the tune itself has to do all the work. Like in a song with words, then the main act is the lyrics and the singing and all that, and how it's arranged, and that's what your ear is drawn to, and that's what you want to hear, and all that. But with instrumental music, the themes have to be very strong. I mean, again, you can make whatever music you want, but it helps if the themes are very strong, so that the ear has something to gravitate towards. You know, if you have a song with a passage in it that is unrelated, that comes out of nowhere, that can be a little jarring. It's like, well, maybe you have all these ideas. So one of the things that can happen when you're writing something is that I don't have enough ideas, and I'm trying to force something out, or I have too many ideas, or there's a deep vein within this theme that can be mined, and now I'm trying to squeeze too much into one song, or you're trying to force the issue somehow, when in fact you can just reduce it down. Again, we were talking about the individual dialogue, the individual ideas without all the ornaments or harmony. Just bring it back down to the basis of what it is. But in an instrumental tune, yeah, it's tougher, because the tune itself has to grab the audience, has to take them on the journey, and they have to be able to, you want people to pay attention to it. They don't want to, turn it off halfway through or whatever. So it has to be interesting enough to keep the audience, but not so clever that it drives people off. Like there's some truly unlistenable stuff out there that's clever for the sake of it. But you know, again, a lot of times the simplest thing wins the day. You know, it's the one that you can hum. Like, can you? That's always a good rule. Like, can you hum it? Can other people hum it? If you were to play that tune for people, would they be able to hum or whistle it back to you?
If you want it to be, you know, popular.
If you want to make money, yeah.
if you want to make money. I mean, if you want it to be artistic, it doesn't have to be that way.
You want people to listen to it, yeah, exactly.
um, um, so if you're writing, in your experience, have you written on a vocal tune? Have you written the melodic line, or do you wait for the lyricist to write words and come up with a melody? Kind of
both,
because that's the way it works.
Yeah, both. I mean, you know, a lot of sometimes if you're co-writing with somebody and you want them to put lyrics to it, it helps for them to hear an idea for a vocal melody, at least an idea, and they can then take it and embellish it and do what they want to it or whatever, however they want to change the idea. Patty and I do that a lot. I'll have a suggestion for a vocal line, and then she'll get a hold of it and it'll evolve. It'll change into something that because she can do more with her voice than I can conceive of on the banjo. So, yeah, sometimes, and then other times no. Other times it's like, here's like the tune I played at the very beginning that didn't have an idea for a vocal melody at all. That was just what she came up with when she started to learn the tune and play it and stuff like that. But yeah, no. Sometimes you can definitely flesh out more of the parts. And have it kind of served up, like here, just plug the words in, kind of thing, and that can be useful. It just depends. Again, it depends on the song. It depends on what's inspiring it or what you're doing, and that kind of thing. And again, like we talked about, sometimes the tunes just pop out. Other times you have to work at them. Like they can be kind of a struggle. And there's one tune on the album that we had envisioned. I had envisioned originally when I came up with the idea for the music, that it would be this longer work, a through composed sort of almost operatic tune that would have words, verses, and things interspersed, no real clear cut chorus or any kind of thing like that, but more of like a general work with the lyrics and the vocal melody as another instrument, essentially. And more broadly with this album, one of the things that we try to do is treat the band like a string quartet or a chamber ensemble. So everybody has like specific things that they're supposed to do in order for the music to weave in and out of it, as opposed to like writing a bluegrass tune where it's like, here's the banjo and then here's the guitar chords and the mandolin and the bass or whatever, and everybody just follow the path. This is G, C, and D, ready, go. You know what I mean? So in that case, like in this particular tune that I'm referencing called "The Freedom We Seek," it's very heavy on the themes. So with the first tune, Take Time, we're following a specific chord progression with this undulating 5/4 rhythm, whereas with The Freedom We Seek, we're following the more the thematic information in it. So it's almost like an instrumental song with lyrics, if that makes sense. And I'll play a little bit of that one just so you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. there's a bit more of it than that, but those are the thematic highlights, I suppose, in that particular tune. So you can imagine space in between those things where lyrics go and stuff like that, and the vocal melody follows those themes too. So in the absence of having Patty here with me to sing it, that's basically the idea. Like the inspiration for that particular tune actually came from early 20th century French impressionist piano players like Satie and Debussy, and things like that, where you get these big pianistic kind of sweeping chord things like this. That kind of that's all one chord, but it sounds like a lot more. Because of the way you split the inversions, which what I mean by that is, like, if this is the chord, if this is an A flat chord, and you keep the G in it, it becomes an A flat major 7, which you can play like that. But if you take that chord and use the top string as your pivot point, then you can jump to the A flat up here and get like as though you were playing it on a piano. And so that fills up. There's a lot more that you can do with just one chord than, you know, you know what I mean. So you can squeeze a lot of information out of that. And this was one of those songs where there was too much information, and it constantly had to be chipped away until it made a functioning song that the band wanted to play. There was a bridge that got axed that would have changed the character of the tune entirely. But in any case, that's part of the process too. Like, you might have an idea for this thing, and all of a sudden, oh my God, too much information, and you have to edit, like cut it down, and it can be tough sometimes because you don't want to get rid of anything if you think it's a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh wait, this is great. Oh wait, no, this is also good. Oh no, wait, this is good. And it's like, yeah, sure, it's all good, but at the same time, you don't want to fill it up with every trick in the book. You can always make that into another song. Sometimes they split into two. That's the thing. And I am a little out of tune. Good call.
So when you're taking stuff out, you're kind of sometimes having different sections that just don't seem to be fitting together. Like, you can't find that little connecting piece to get them together, and they just kind of...
That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
That's a real big part of it. It's like it could fit, but it doesn't, or the connective tissue, if you will, isn't strong. It's not... Like, you got two... It sounds like there's two separate melodies here, and there's this kind of weak thing in the middle that doesn't really join it together as well as it could. And you don't necessarily mash those two things together, because then it doesn't make sense. So that's a thing. That's a tricky bit. Like, sometimes you can come up with some really great melodic information, but then if it doesn't connect, it weakens the tune in general, and that can be tough. That's definitely been a work in progress. That's something that you can practice, just like anything else, any technique.
Mm-hmm.
To be sure.
It's kind of like cooking when you you have a big spice cabinet, and you're like, I like thyme, and I like cumin, and I like... You need to start putting it all in, and it's like...
Right, and it's too much.
Yeah.
And you can't take it away. I mean, with music, though, you can take it away. Like, you can get rid of stuff. You know what I mean? So, like, you can't unsalt something. But in this case, like I said, with this particular tune, there was a whole section in the middle that just didn't fit, and it'll get scrapped for now, but probably used somewhere else. And that's always the thing too. You know, if you have to cut something out of your tune because it's too much, then save it for some other thing, because it could turn into its own song entirely, which is always fun. Sorry.
Yeah. Going back to Take Time. You know, you're playing most of the tune is in 5/4, and so, you know, we're so used to playing our roll patterns on, you know, when we're playing 3-finger banjo in 4, and these patterns are all we've learned them from, since we started. They're all based on 4/4 time. What kind of issues do you have in playing roll patterns over in 5/4 time?
Main issues are, trying not to repeat notes, or try not to get your right hand tangled up in whatever it is. So that's why I was like, with that tune, the focus being on it being accessible. And it's not just accessible to the listener, but you have to be able to play it. And so in that particular song, as I was kind of coming up with the 5/4, because again, I'm using Bela's Blue Bop as my 5/4 template. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that tune, the rhythm part of that goes 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. And so Bela had to fit the roll to make, to get the notes in. One really deceptively easy way to do it is to actually count the notes you're playing. Count them. Are there 5? Are there 10? Because it's going to double whatever it is. A lot of times with banjo rolls, if you're doing a forward reverse roll, there's 8 notes in that. That's one phrase, or it can be, but there's 8 notes in there. So like, do you have 10 notes in your 5/4 phrase? If so, then you're good. It's going to fit. So you just have to kind of figure out what pattern works the best. So for this particular song, what I'm doing is, so that's thumb, index, middle on the low strings on the D, G, and B string, and then again, so it's almost like a Shelton roll or some kind of inside roll. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Oops. And then
What's the second half of that roll? Sorry, I got
That's okay. So.
Yeah. So you're going from 5th string.
Yep. So it continues on. So you're going like, in other words. And so it's, again, you reduce it down to its constituent parts. And just make sure that it's something that you can play. You're not doubling, you're not playing 2 notes at the same time, or you're not using the same finger 2 times, etc., so that you don't get tangled up in what you're doing. And then you simply just try to make I'm using these stretchy versions of these chords because I wanted to be able to invert it. To be able to have that option. It's the same chord.
Well, what chord are you holding right there?
So I'm sorry. This is worth going over. This is an F. If I was going to play an F chord here, this is the classic shape for F. If I was going to make this F a major 7, then I have to bring the pinky back one, which means I have to reconfigure my fingers to do this. So the notes in this chord are F, A, C, and E. So if we take the F, keep it in the bass, here's C, E, and then A in the top. That's an F major 7. It's the same chord. And then we add the G, of course. And so then if you just switch that, if you switch these 2 around, it still can be considered an F major 7 chord. You just put the F in the high instead of in the A in the bass. It's a bit stretchy. You don't necessarily have to play that chord that way. But I think it sounds nice with this roll. And so then when you're ready to play the A flat chord, same way we learned before. Sorry, I am out of tune a little bit. When we played this A flat with the open G in it, you can do the same. It's the same shape. You just moved it. And so what I'm doing here is same roll. Right hand's always doing the same thing. Oops. Oops. Sorry. That's what I meant to do, because this ends up being a weird thing. If I was going to do the same, I'd have to go, which changes your shape. You have to break your shape. But if you just change it a little bit to make it more comfortable, it still does the same thing. It's just a little different, a little bit of a different inversion. But it makes the song. You're able to play it. It's not going to be a knuckle buster, as they say.
And that's a good tip too. I think compositional tip of taking a chord and using an inversion, but not just the inversions of a full different position up the neck, but just taking because the fourth and first string are the same in G tuning, and just flipping those notes basically. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah, that's
it can kind of change the harmony. So like in the chorus of this tune, the chorus chords are all straight up and down diatonic. It's C, A minor, F, C, G the first time, then C, A minor, B flat, F, G. But rather than just play the same old voicings of the chord, this is the normal way. Sounds fine. The way it would match thematically more with what happened in the verse is to kind of coming out of the C. So I'm setting myself up. This is mostly a C chord, but I have the F in it, which was our inversion, because the next thing that happens is A minor. This can also be an A minor chord in a weird way. So you're kind of setting yourself up for it being there. And then there's your C and G, back to C, set up, A minor, and now B flat. If we want to make that, there's your B flat 7, and it's very banjoistic in your right hand. That can kind of help. There's a lot of ways to, in other words, there's a lot of ways to do the same thing. You just have to figure out what fits in that particular moment. All you have to do is put your fingers in the right place at the right time. That's it.
Lots of your tunes. You sent me 3 tunes, and they all have a time signature change in them.
The ones I sent, yeah, not all of the songs, but yes.
But the 3 that we
got
looking at, yeah. and so is it hard? First of all, shifting between the 2 different time signatures, and then do you also sometimes write? A lot of this time, those shifts are in spots where you've kind of worked out the part, but do you also write in these time signatures in improvisational sections and have to shift mid flow period? Yeah.
Sometimes. So what's really cool about the banjo is that you can syncopate and subdivide like crazy, because there's always this rolling motion. And one of the things that this is a fascinating bit that we discovered. We already kind of knew this in going into the recording project, but it was laid bare several times in the process. And that is banjo players, maybe in general, but myself certainly, hear time sometimes differently than other people. So as I mentioned before, the other folks in my band, who are extremely talented people and all trained musicians, have been trained to hear time a certain way, like this. But I hear time like this all the time. So there's no, if you strip it down, there's no time signature there. You could subdivide that however you want. And for me, in a rolling banjoistic kind of way, it's easy to flip time like that. Even in traditional bluegrass tunes, it happens all the time. Take Ground Speed, for example. This song is in 4/4 or 2/4, however you want to count it. But the first bit is 3/4. So, but it fits because it's syncopated and it works with the rest of the tune, and eventually by the end of the phrase it evens out. So like you might start with like a weird what sounds like a weird time shift, but is actually in 4/4. Another more recent example, Bela Fleck's Vertigo from the Bluegrass Heart album, the first track on there. The B part has some crazy time stuff, but it's 4/4. It's just accented 5 and 6. So you can count it like that the whole time, but you might have accents in 5 and 6. Still 4/4, but you got those accents in it, and so that can kind of change things. For me, like I said, for me and for maybe for banjo players in general, it's a little easier for us to shift like that, but let me tell you, the rest of the band does not like it. They sometimes struggle with banjo music because of that, for that very reason. So that can be interesting to try to communicate to other folks. But I think you could very easily experiment with ways to shift time and try different time signatures and stuff like that out. Really just kind of play what's in your head and see if you can count it out that way, rather than try to force it into something and see if it works.
Yeah, do these usually these ideas in different time signatures come naturally, or are you thinking, let's write something in this time signature and come up with an idea? And
both.
Either way.
Both. It depends. Yeah, it depends. Again, on this particular album, I'm using it as an example, and I know that no one's heard it yet, but there are some straight up 4/4 fist pumping pop tunes on there that don't do anything crazy. Like, they're totally normal songs in terms of what normal songs are. So there's no need for anything clever like that. But sometimes the tunes call for it because you're going for a certain thing. Like, it's like, all right, well, I can do this. Or I have this idea for a thing, in which case you might think about it in terms of like a phrase, as opposed to, I need to insert 5/4 right here. Like, here's a section where I need this to be that. No, instead maybe it's just the way it rolls on the banjo. Like, it might just be the way it comes out because that's what the tune calls for. So in the wider topic of not writing bluegrass on banjo, non-bluegrass songs on banjo, you might use very banjoistic ideas. In other words, you might do something that's really conducive to rolling and other like kind of lick-based or riff-based type things that you're accustomed to doing on a banjo in bluegrass context, but then just shift something that makes it a little bit different. So, for example, there's a song on there, one of the 3 that I sent you guys, cheekily and tentatively titled "Not a Bluegrass Song" or "Definitely Not a Bluegrass Song," has some of that stuff in it. So I'll play like the A and B part. It's devoid of the arrangement of the song. As you can imagine, this is one where the soloists get to like rip one, like you can really rip a break on and that kind of thing, because it calls for that. But the end of the tune has some weird time signature changes on purpose, because it's just one of those things that, like, for a banjo player it makes sense, for everybody else it doesn't, and that is an interesting thing to deal with when you're showing it to somebody else. So here we go. This is definitely not a bluegrass song.
Very nice.
So
Very nice.
there's some stuff happening at the end there, but for the most part, that's very banjoistic to do. Like, even in its craziest moment, when you're going up the neck here, this is a C minor to a C sharp. All that's really natural feeling, because you're using it's basically a forward-backward roll. And you don't have to do that. You can go, and that's totally fine. But adding this again isn't that foreign, because it's kind of a normal banjo thing to do. And then from there you've got and that's the time signature change. That's, I think, in 7. And all of that sounds crazy, but it doesn't feel crazy. Like, it actually feels pretty normal to play, and you just hope that the rest of the band can do it, which they can.
Right.
They're awesome.
Do you bring what are some other compositional ideas you do, other than, we've talked a lot about the time signature thing, but
Sure.
but what about other rhythmic ideas do you bring in? Because often with banjoists, it's a stream of notes of eighth
Yeah.
notes, and it's just, and there's not much happening rhythmically that so what are some ideas that you like to do? How do you like to break that up, and kind of get out of that bluegrass stream of note pattern?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different technique things you can do. Like pinches can sound great, depending on the tune. Like one of them. One of the things I will say this before we get into that just too hard is that one cool experiment that I've been messing with for the last couple of years since the pandemic, I guess, is to think pianistically with the banjo. We talked about that a little bit with the split inversion, that kind of thing, so that it sounds more sweeping and that kind of thing. So, like, if you can kind of think, like, what would a WWPD, what would a piano player do? Then you can kind of reorient your brain to do more stuff like that. So piano players aren't always going blah, 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 like banjo players do. They're playing chords, like, a lot of times. So you can do that too. Like, it's okay. You don't have to strum it necessarily, and you don't have to boom chuck it like we do in bluegrass, right? Like, you can do pinch chords and stuff like that. Sounds really good. Like our tune on the playlist, Earl in Vienna does that. It goes. Oops. Like, that's in there, and that's a theme. That's a melodic theme right there. Also, that kind of stuff can be kind of cool. I'm just making stuff up, but like, that can kind of help break up a little bit of the rhythm, or have some kind of rhythmic variation in whatever you're doing, so it's not all the same thing over and over again, depending on what the tune calls for. Instrumental tunes will probably have a little bit more of that color than vocal tunes, because whatever you're doing on a vocal tune is there to support the vocals for the most part. It's not really going to be like, let me flash the banjo out all over the words, and that's distracting. So you can kind of drop back a little bit and explore some different textures. Also, like, dissonant textures can add rhythmic variation. For example, if I was going to play A minor, here's an A minor chord, and I want it to sound like this, maybe. So this is an A minor with a B in it, if you want to think about it like that, which gives a little bit of dissonance. But, like, pinching that can sound cool if you resolve back to your A minor chord. And there's a tune on the album called Why Don't You? I didn't send you guys this one. Where in the B part of it goes like this. This is all I'm doing in the B part. So you can of sounds like Vivaldi a little bit. Like it's definitely got a classical vibe to it. But instead of rolling those chords, I'm straight pinching it so that you get like a pulse, I guess. And that's a cool, easy thing to do. There's also the pedal tone thing. This is also fun, where you like pedal one note and then pinch the top of the chord. That stuff is really neat. That's fun to do. And that can kind of help break up your...
Which string, just there in that example,
Sorry.
which string were you pedaling on?
In that example, I was pedaling the middle string, the G string, with my thumb and index. And then if I'm going to play the top of a G chord, if this is the G chord, then make it part of the... or D. Like that. And that's a good way to break up your rhythm too. And you can get a lot of cool ideas out of that. And it's banjoistic in that it kind of falls under your fingers okay, but can add a different kind of non-bluegrass, I suppose, element. And we can argue all day about what is and what isn't bluegrass, but for the purposes of this, it's more like, here are just some slight changes you can make to whatever you're doing to make it a little bit outside the box.
Mm-hmm. Another common thing that you see banjoists do when writing a lot of the time is writing very diatonic music. And so a lot of your tunes that you sent, they're changing keys or, here and there. And but they aren't sounding, it's not sounding atonal at the same time. So what were some suggestions for people starting to expand their tonality, so it's coming outside of just diatonic harmony.
So one thing that's useful within and without the context of diatonic harmony is common tone, which is to say two or more chords that share the same notes. So diatonic chords, of course, are going to share a lot of the same notes. Like that chord progression in Take Time is like C, A minor, F. Those three right there share most of the same notes. And so if you think about other notes that, or other chords that could fit, for example, in the A part of that, we have this F. If we just strip it down, we're not going to use the upper extensions, maybe we will, but if we just had an F, and the next chord is an A flat, like they normally don't go together. That A flat may not be like, that's not in the, that is, A minor is, but not A flat. But that being said, F and A flat share C. So here are two seemingly unrelated chords that share something in common. And using that information, you can kind of go from there. Well, it's like, all right, well, F and A flat share in a C chord. That's all well and good, but those two chords, the F and the A flat by themselves, may not sound as good. But again, if you do the major 7, that's a little nicer to hear. But again, at the surface, I'm adding things to it I shouldn't be. But an F and an A flat share that note. The next note in sequence is an E flat minor, which doesn't share anything with F except if you were to, again, with your extensions, if you were to make it an F suspended, which is to say add a B flat note to it, then it does. So they can be related. All that can be related if you want it to. Like E flat, for example, E flat and A7 don't fit together. That's outside of diatonic harmony, but they do share G. So look for combinations like that. Like look for things that share common tone, that have some kind of relation to one another, even though they seem like they may not. You can get there's a lot there to explore in that regard once you start to kind of mess around with it. And if it doesn't fit, move one note or another out of the chord. So, for example, we were talking about F and A minor, and F and A flat. But what if we had A minor and F, F minor, A minor, F minor? That's all. Every Danny Elfman, Tim Burton movie. It's Beetlejuice. And so those two things may not feel right at first, but they can be depending on the context. And so that's really the trick. It's like what happens before or after that to fit those things together. And so you can get a lot. You can get a lot through common tone. That's one way to do it for sure. The other thing you can do that's also helpful to kind of get outside of the diatonic box is to think in terms of patterns instead of chord changes. Right, all throughout this discussion, we've talked about just the chord changes and how they fit together, but pattern-based stuff can be really useful too. That is to say, you take a thing, you take an idea, and then you move it 3 frets, and then you move it 3 frets, and then you move it or 4 frets or whatever it is. So at the end of the Not a Bluegrass tune, we have this one thing that can just be repeated every 4 frets, and it goes down the diminished scale, which is another set of patterns, but so all the same right hand movement, all the same left hand stuff. I'm just moving it by pattern rather than by I need to be in this diatonic harmony or whatever. I need to follow this particular chord progression, etc., etc. And that can go a long way. You can do a lot with patterns. It doesn't have to just be that kind of thing. You can experiment freely, and that stuff is really cool to mess with. Like, see if I can find another example. Like, that doesn't sound terrible. That's a weird... It's not any chord progression. I'm just trying to repeat the same pattern by inverting one chord. Start with this particular chord wherever it lies, and then move everything back a half step and keep this one, and then do it again. And that stuff can be really cool too. Pattern-based things. You hear Bela do that a lot. He definitely likes patterns and minor third progressions and stuff like that. And you can get a lot of really cool stuff out of that for sure.
Well, Hank, we've gone over a lot, and it's the top of the hour. Is there more you want to go over right now?
Or we could do this for days.
Yeah, we could keep going. We could go and going, definitely.
You have to throttle it.
And Jamie, is there... Maybe bring Jamie and he's monitoring the chat. Is there other questions in the chat?
Firstly, thank you. That was
sure.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
really,
you guys.
really informative. That's really... Thank you so much for joining us, as always.
Happy
and also,
to be here.
for anyone who hasn't checked it out, there is a portion of our site under the lifestyle part of the navigation, and there's a section for Hank in there, and there's a slew of videos that you've created for us. Some of them while you were here last time at the factory, and others that we've done kind of remotely at your place throughout the course of the pandemic. All very useful. The most recent one being making use of the right hand tonally, and how to make the most of that. So go check those out. A couple of questions on your banjo. Now, the last time we saw you, you had a pretty major upgrade on that banjo since then. You want to tell the world what it was and what effect it had?
Sure, yeah. This is a Maple Blossom, factory Maple Blossom, that I had Deering build for me in 2005, and now they come factory standard with radius fingerboards, but this one, before that, I had them had you guys put a radius fingerboard on it, so it has that. It also has a pickup. I got the wooden armrest and stainless steel frets, but most significantly it has the Kruger tone ring in it, which you may be able to see right there.
There we go.
And that made the tone explode. It really changed the game by leaps and bounds in this banjo, and it sounds beautiful. It enhanced everything that was already there and added more depth and more warmth and more volume and more punch and all the things that made this banjo great to begin with. it enhanced. It made it even better, and it sounds great. The album, I meant to tell you guys this earlier. This is the first recording with the new tone ring, so you'll hear that reflected in the record, which is really cool.
Very nice.
So yeah, it's been Frank and banjoed quite a bit, and I still have some more ideas for how to mess with it. So,
Nice. The text message you sent me when you got that back, the first time you played it, was one of my favorite text messages. I can't repeat it, but it was.
Sure.
Suffice to say, you were very very happy.
I said, "Gee Willikers, this is great."
Gee Willikers was definitely not in that message.
It's in parentheses.
Jerry is asking, could we get Hank to play his prelude in G?
In G or G minor?
G minor. I'm sorry, G minor. Yep.
Oh man, God, I hope I remember it. Let's see. I haven't played it in a while. Oh man, I don't remember the rest of it. I'm gonna have to go back and relearn it. That was the first. So for those of you watching at home, during the pandemic, I set about writing 24 preludes for string quartet and 5-string banjo, and I think I'm 20 deep. But G minor was the first one, and I haven't played it. We worked it up as a band for a little while to be a prelude to Erlen Vienna, and I have since obviously forgotten how to play most of it. So I will go back and relearn that and post a video. Maybe that could be another Deering video that I send you guys. We can analyze one of those tunes, and I'll take it apart for the people.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be very cool.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't come through with the G minor prelude just now.
No, not a problem. Jerry is also asking, are there any plans for a solo instrumental album? There already is one. There's a duo instrumental album called Impulse. It's on Spotify. If you look under my name and Impulse, it'll come up. That I did with a bandmate of mine named Lindsay Timms. And when you listen to the album, it's all instrumental, it's all original, and it sounds like a full band, but he plays all the other instruments, and I play the banjo. So he's on mandolin, guitar, fiddle, and bass. Wow.
And that's out there. But I would, yes, the Prelude project will eventually be recorded, and that's all instrumental. That'll be banjo and string quartet when it's time. And we've actually been able to perform some of those preludes. So some of it is online. There's some stuff on YouTube that you can find if you go to our channel, and you'll see us playing it with different string ensembles from the North Carolina Symphony, the Winston-Salem Symphony, and stuff like that.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, it's great.
That's what I've got. Is there anything else you wanted to share? Where can people find you? Let's talk about that.
You can find us at hankandpatty.com for all the news related to the band. That's going to be the main thing for a while. We're getting back out on the road now, so stay tuned for tour dates. Hopefully we'll come to your area soon. We've got a lot of stuff in the works that we will be posting about soon, for sure.
Cool.
Some really exciting stuff. And that's been the main thing, like just trying to get back out on the road post-COVID, well, not really post-COVID, but post-lockdown at any rate, and get back to touring and all that kind of stuff, playing festivals and whatever.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be picking up at this point. There's a number of artists out, reaching out to us.
It's a slow roll, but it's coming. It's coming out. We're good.
Need a banjo? Help me out.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Yeah, no, that's really good to see. Well, very good. Yeah, do you want to play us out with something?
Sure. Yeah, why not? Let's see.
That'd be cool.
How about since we were talking about that instrumental album, I'll play an old school tune from that. Maybe that'll be kind of fun. Let's see. Let's do this one.